Well, Trey Gowdy was very popular today. Popular in all the wrong places. Popular among the lib media. He's being quoted on every national news program, TV and radio. And Democrats are lauding him everywhere. And you see, we're all supposed to follow Trey Gowdy because he's objective, he's a former federal prosecutor, he's smarter than everybody else, and he's drawn a conclusion. There's nothing wrong with this FBI informant. The FBI did exactly what the FBI is supposed to do, and the American people agree. And, of course, Trey Gowdy knows that the American people agree because nobody speaks for the American people like Trey Gowdy. I suspect, despite his endless appearances on television, only Lindsey Graham beats him out, of course. 98% of the American people don't even know who he is, since 30% of the American people can't name one branch of the federal government. But Manhattan's very excited about Trey Gowdy. Los Angeles is very excited about Trey Gowdy. Oh, yeah. Greenwich Village, I think they're going to have a party for Trey Gowdy. And same with San Francisco. So what did Trey Gowdy say that's so worthy of national attention and personal acclaim? What did he say? Well, he was on Fox last night with Martha McCallum, and then this morning he was on CBS, and this is what he had to say. Cut one, go.
Chris Wray and Rod Rosenstein have at least made it clear to us Donald Trump was never the target of the investigation. He's not the current target of the investigation. Now, keep in mind, that can all change depending on what a witness says. But as of now, I think Chris Wray and Rod Rosenstein are stunned whenever people think Trump is the target of their investigation. I'll leave it up to them how to brief the president.
Well, let's stop a minute. Why is he saying Trump the target of the investigation? Now, it wasn't long ago that Mr. Gowdy, and I pointed this out 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, I think it was. He said there's really no difference between a subject and a target, says the former federal prosecutor. There's really no difference between a subject and a target. I said, what? What is he talking about? Hey, there's really no difference between a target and a subject. Of course there is, but he said there wasn't. And now he's telling us, look, Trump was never the target of this investigation. That's very slippery, like a slip-and-fall lawyer. Of course Trump was the target of the investigation. They just haven't found anything on Trump. You think Manafort was the target of the investigation? Or Gates? Or Papadopoulos? Say that 10 times fast. Or Lieutenant General Flynn? When we talk about Trump world, the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, the Trump presidency, who the hell do they think the target of this is? Now, that said, there's nothing on Trump, is there? But they'd like nothing more than to get something on Trump. Why do you think they're taking Manafort to the gallows day in and day out? Why do you think Mr. Gowdy, Mr. former federal prosecutor, they've interviewed virtually every single person who's ever worked for Donald Trump, whether in the campaign, the transition, or in his administration? Why is that, Mr. Gowdy? You're a former federal prosecutor. Why did they interview all those people? Why were several of them subpoenaed and appeared before the federal grand jury? Why did Trump, the Trump White House, Trump Inc., have to turn over hundreds of thousands of pages of information if they're not trying to get Trump, Mr. Gowdy, former federal prosecutor, of course? Did I mention that? I should continue to mention that. No, you don't understand. They're just trying to find the Russians. Now, where's the easiest place to find the Russians? Is it in Trump world? No. It's at the DNC. Didn't the Russians hack the DNC's emails? Haven't we heard this over and over and over again? Yes, but we're just investigating the Russians, and the American people support what the FBI did. We're not talking about the FBI. We're talking about Comey, leaker, McCabe, leaker, also criminal referrals. That McCabe. Stroke, Gates, and the rest. The people who actually work at the FBI aren't even involved in this, other than this little rogue cabal that the New York Times alerted us to, accidentally, of course. No, but you don't understand. They're just investigating Russians. Well, did they have an informant, a.k.a. a spy, at the DNC to chase down the Russians who were hacking the DNC's emails? No. If they're trying to protect us and the candidates in the election from the Russians, as we pointed out last week, why weren't there informants in Jill Stein's campaign or Hillary Clinton's campaign or Bernie Sanders' campaign? Well, I hadn't thought about that one, says the former federal prosecutor. Well, let's continue with this fascinating interview that has the left and the media, one and the same, all a Twitter, if you will. Go ahead.
The view that you're talking about right now, was that strengthened when you went into this briefing last week?
Yes, I am even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump.
Well, it has nothing to do with them now because they didn't find anything. But they sure as hell have been trying. Has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That special counsel who wants to take us to the brink of a constitutional crisis with 49 areas of questions that he wants to ask Donald Trump. Does that have nothing to do with Donald Trump and only that to do with Russia? Amazing, isn't it? Everybody is glad. You know, I'll say this about Gowdy. Mr. Gowdy, I worked at Maine Justice. You never worked there. You were an assistant U.S. attorney. I'm sure you were the best assistant U.S. attorney the world has ever known. But the FBI has done stuff in this case that I've never seen in the years that I worked at the Justice Department as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General. And I'm not the only one. I know a lot of former federal prosecutors who think exactly the same thing. And here's the other thing Trey Gowdy cannot tell us. If this was just routine and it's no big deal, as my buddy Dan Bongino points out, well, somebody needs to ask Trey Gowdy. Why did the FBI, Mr. Comey, conceal this information, conceal it from the congressional oversight ranking members and chairman for 8 months? And yet, it's leaked to the press. Is that what the American people want the FBI to do, Mr. Gowdy? I don't think so. But it doesn't matter. The left has what it wants. Another putative Republican retiring, so he's free to speak his mind, such as it is. But he wasn't done. So excited were the media that they found Trey Gowdy. That Trey Gowdy disagreed. There's not a spy here, no. And then we have people who run spy agencies in the past for Obama involved in they're not spies, they're human resource individuals. Or they're informants, as I explained yesterday. The semantics are irrelevant. But what's an informant? Take an example, the mob. Take an example, the mob. An informant's a guy who's been with the mob, been mobbed up for years and years and years, then he becomes an informant for the federal government. He informs on his former colleagues. A spy is somebody who is inserted into a situation and gathers information. This guy Halper, the Yale professor, he was not part of the Trump campaign. He was just asking questions. You know, it's like going up to the bar. I think the senior judicial analyst said on Fox, going up to the bar and talking to people. What's the big deal? He's reporting to the FBI. That's the big deal. All these phony civil libertarians. All these phony quasi-slip-and-fall lawyers. How easy it is for them to dismiss the tyranny of a government out of control. It's unbelievable when you put this stuff together. The unmasking that took place. The FISA application. The dossier with Hillary Clinton and the DNC funding it. The endless leaks. Oh, this is what the American people would want, don't you know? Then he's on CBS. CBS this morning. Hey, where's Charlie Rose? Well, that's a whole other story. Nora O'Donnell. Cut 2, go.
Was there a spy?
That is not a term I've ever used in the criminal justice system. Undercover, informant.
Hey, genius. It is a counterintelligence investigation. It was not a criminal investigation. Hello, Trey, former federal prosecutor. That is a word that they use, however, on the counterintelligence side of the ledger, and it was a counterintelligence investigation. FISA is not part of a criminal investigation. It's part of a counterintelligence investigation. The informant, a word that you do use, spy, a word you don't use, spy is often used in counterintelligence investigations. Go ahead.
Informant, those are all words I'm familiar with. I've never heard the term spy used.
So when the president says Spygate, that's not
What does he mean he's never heard the term spy used? Is this a joke? Is this a joke? It's the proper nomenclature that people like me and others who have heard the term used apply to somebody who is used by the FBI or another federal department or agency to spy on other individuals and provide information to the government. Well, I've never heard that used in the criminal justice context. We're not talking about the criminal justice context. We're talking about this guy sits on the damn intelligence committee and I have to educate him? No wonder he's retiring. Yes, now I'm going to go on to bigger and better things, you know. Go ahead.
Inserted into the campaign. Have you seen any evidence of that?
I have not. That's an espionage term. That's not a law enforcement term.
Because it's not a law enforcement investigation at the time. Oh, my Lord. And, of course, Nora O'Donnell there leading questions. And the former federal prosecutor is more than happy to be led. Go ahead.
The FBI acted properly in this matter.
Based on what I have seen, I don't know what the FBI could have done or should have done other than run out a lead that someone loosely connected with the campaign was making assertions about Russia. I would think you would want the FBI to find out whether or not there was any validity.
So, Mr. Gowdy, you want the FBI to find out, really you're talking about Papadopoulos. Mr. Gowdy, that would have taken a 2-hour interview by the FBI. And you damn well know it. A 2-hour interview. It wouldn't require a FISA application and a warrant. Wouldn't require all that took place within Obama land. He has no curiosity whatsoever about what Obama knew and when he knew it. No curiosity whatsoever about a January 5th meeting that took place. January 5th, 2017 meeting that took place with the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, Sally Yates, the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Comey, the Director of the FBI, and Susan Rice, the head of the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. He has no interest in knowing what took place there, and a lot took place there. He has no interest in knowing about the politics of this. I don't know what else the FBI could have done. I just don't know. Interview Mr. Papadopoulos and be done with it. Mr. Papadopoulos has pled to making a false statement to federal investigators. 1 count. He hasn't pled to any espionage. And the word spy, Mr. Gowdy, is used in the espionage world, in the counterintelligence world. And that's where this began, Mr. Gowdy, Mr. Former Federal Prosecutor. And that's the whole point. Informant is used in the criminal context. Spy is used in the espionage context. And Professor Halper would not have been in and around the Trump campaign gathering information but for the fact he was working for and paid for by the Obama administration and working directly for the FBI. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gowdy is now our North Star, our guide star. How do I know? Because he's being praised by CNN and MSNBC. He's all over mainstream, quote-unquote, media. Don't you like the way they call themselves mainstream? Now he's on CBS. He's graduated from cable. I'll be right back.